My name is Chelsea DeColle. I'm a Certified Nutritional Practitioner and an educator for Jamieson Wellness. And today I'm really excited to be on Nature's Fair's platform talking to you all about a beginner's guide for plant-based eating. So those of you who are joining me are probably really curious about what a plant-based diet looks like. So let's get right into it. And please let me know in the comments if you are having any problems hearing me as I go through this. I had to switch from my laptop, so hopefully this is working well now that I'm on my phone. But what is a plant-based diet? This is something that you're probably hearing a lot about and very curious about. There are certainly some terms that you may be familiar with in terms of what plant-based eating might look like. The terms vegan and vegetarian, those are words that are commonly used to describe ways of eating that are plant-based. So somebody who's vegan is going to exclude all animal products from their diet. So they're going to be eating only plants. They won't even eat anything that comes from an insect. So think honey or even like cricket protein powder. So they're not going to consume anything that has any animal or insect. But a vegetarian diet is one where you will be eating plants, but you also may consume some animal products like dairy or eggs. And a couple of terms that might be newer to you are flexitarian or plant-forward eating. So those are newer terms that are kind of just coming out into the mainstream that you might be hearing about. And those are referring to people that are consuming animal products, but are also trying to move towards eating more plants. So they're looking more for a plant-filled diet, but they do also consume animal products. Now, when we're thinking about going plant-based or incorporating more plant-based foods into our lifestyle, the key really is to start gradually. This can be a really challenging idea for a lot of people. I don't know for those of you who are watching if you currently eat a lot of plant-based foods or if you're just curious on how you can move more in that direction. But my first real key piece of advice is to just go slowly. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. You certainly need to gauge where you are at in what you consume as your diet on a daily basis and then slowly work things in from there. But I'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Next, I just wanted to mention where all of these plant-based ideas are really originating from. So we have to go way back in history and think about what life was like. And we're not just talking centuries, but millennia ago. So that's really when a lot of plant-based and plant-forward diets started. So vegetarianism in particular, some of its origins date all the way back to literally like 5 BC or 500 BC, going years and years and years back. And that was in the Indus Valley and parts of India. So this is really where vegetarianism and some of that plant-forward living and way of eating really started. It was also found in the ancient Greek as well. So just a little history lesson there, some fun facts for you in terms of where some of that way of eating and living does originate. And when we think about the history of plant-based food, we also have to make that connection in terms of benefits, because we see that throughout the world, different cultures and countries across the globe choose to live and consume plants more than animals. And we're seeing that a lot of those cultures really have longevity too. So there's a lot of health benefits to consuming plant-based foods. And I'm going to talk about some of those specific health benefits in just a moment. But let's talk about why plant-based diets are so popular and why people are choosing to turn towards that more now. Well, people are becoming more conscious. Certainly the internet, social media, you being here right now and us having this conversation are ways that we are becoming more aware. So people are becoming a lot more conscious of their consumption. Things that we're consuming, both that we're eating, things that we're watching, things that we're purchasing for ourselves, all of these things, and we really want to support a healthier planet. So that is certainly one really important and big way that people are looking towards plant-based. for a lifestyle as well as an eating style. And as I mentioned, there's also a health need that's connected. So we know there's a ton of health benefits to eating more plants, but there's often a need as well. So there's way more dietary intolerances and allergies, and just a need for people to be consuming things that are more plant-based, because oftentimes there are other things, some of which are animal-based, that are causing problems for people's health. And as I mentioned, that desire for change, so we're becoming more aware of the environmental impacts in the agricultural industry and sustainability on a whole. So those are other reasons why people are choosing to go plant-based, and to support the betterment of a healthier planet, and also caring for the animals on it. So animal welfare and ethics is another big reason. And I'm sure all of you, I see there's some people commenting in the chat that they agree with a lot of these statements. Now, certainly there might be other reasons. I would love for you to share some of those in the chat for me to see, as well as for the rest of the viewers. But let's get into what some of the health benefits are, because I know that's what everyone's really interested in understanding. So certainly there is evidence that is long standing out there, but there's also a lot of emerging evidence as research continues, showing support for plant-based diets in helping reduce cardiovascular related conditions, so a lot of things that are related to the heart. Also, we see there's tons of evidence showing how plants can help to lower cholesterol. And when you think about what plants are, they contain a ton of fiber. We don't get fiber from many other sources of food. So you're not getting fiber from a protein, you're not going to get fiber from a fat unless it's something like an avocado. So fiber intake is super important for our overall health. It also helps with bowel regularity. As a nutritionist, I love to talk about poop, and this is something that's really important, and just for our overall gastrointestinal health and health in general. So getting lots of fiber that's found in plants is going to have a real benefit overall. It can also help in terms of weight management. So I think many of you, if you've ever tried a plant-based diet or just consuming more plants and maybe avoiding a few other things, have seen some benefit in that regard. And it's in part because of all that good fiber in those plants. And also, when we're consuming more plants, we're getting more nutrients. So you think of the diversity of all the plants that there are out there. And so we're getting added vitamins, minerals, as well as antioxidants, and those are all going to have benefits not for just one specific part of our body, but for our body overall. Certainly individual organs and systems that it can help, but our overall well-being. And another benefit of eating plants is connecting to the earth. So when we are consuming plants, we can have a sense of gratitude for the earth, for what it provides for us. Also, paying attention to our food can really help with our digestion. So not only when we appreciate what we're consuming, is it going to have a benefit for us from a mental health standpoint, but also from a digestive standpoint. When we are showing gratitude, when we're paying attention to our food, our digestion improves and we can actually benefit from our food more. But there are some downsides to plant-based foods. I'm curious if any of you are familiar with what I might be kind of leaning towards. There's a couple of things. It can be hard to get enough of the green stuff. It can be hard to get enough protein when you think plant-based diets, and sometimes it can cause a lot of tummy troubles. I see a comment here, will plant-based diet or vegetarian diet help with inflammation? And it certainly can. It's definitely one of that overall health benefits by consuming more plants that are less inflammatory for the body. So when it comes to those downsides of plant foods, so it can be hard to get enough protein. Is that something that you find you struggle with when you're thinking about going more plant-based and consuming more plants? As a lot of plants contain protein, so we have to keep that in mind. All plants contain protein, just to varying degrees. So depending on what type of plant it is, some will have more protein content than others, but you're never eating one food by itself. You're always combining different types of plants or proteins, fats and carbs in different forms, whether they're plant or not. So you're getting a variety. So your body is getting all that it needs, and it can pull from all of the different aspects and the different protein sources from those different plants. So think about that when you're planning to go a little bit more plant forward, is that you just have to consume a variety of things and you can get all of those plant sources. What plants contain the most protein? I'll certainly touch a little bit more on that, but think legumes, so those are beans and pulses. Nuts are really high in protein, as well as a lot of grains. So those are some of the big ones that provide a lot of protein, but those are also the ones that can cause some of those tummy troubles. So you might experience gas or bloating, or maybe even some other issues like having constipation or diarrhea with some plant-based foods. Everyone's body is different in terms of how they digest their food and actually what everyone needs. So that's something that's really important to keep in mind for yourself, is that you're different from every other person that's joined us on this live in what you need for your body and how your body's going to use it. So keep that in mind and make sure if you're going to make a significant change in your diet that you're working with a healthcare practitioner. So talking to your doctor, talking to a nutritionist, those things are all going to be super helpful for you. So someone's just commented that the plant protein is a more complete nutrient source than animal protein. So it depends on what nutrients you're talking about. Certainly from an amino acid standpoint, animal protein is going to have more, but all those other nutrients, likely there's going to be a higher amounts of vitamins and minerals. So some rules of thumb when it comes to adding more plants to your diet. Try to get more fruits and veggies. I know that's something that you've heard a million times before, and it's just as important as it was said to you last time as it is as I'm sharing it with you right now. So fruits, veggies, whole grains, nuts and seeds, as well as those beans and pulses. So it can be hard to get enough. I know that our recommended daily intake is 6 to 8 servings of veggies every single day. How many of you actually get that every day? I'd say most days I get close, but not always. So even though I'm a nutritionist myself, that's something that I still can struggle with as well. So all those legumes, those grains, those nuts, and those seeds, so those are the ones that can cause that tummy trouble. So what can we do about that? When you experience some of those things, it might put you off of wanting to continue trying plant-based. So that's where sprouting and fermenting come in. So these are really ancient practices. These are things that have been around for centuries, if not millennia. These are practices that really help to increase the nutrient value of our food, so they can help to maximize on how our body can digest them, as well as the nutrient availability of them. So a question here, are there other vegetables that I can eat with high protein plant sources, legumes and such, that help with stomach? What's the full comment? No, can't see it. I'll have to go back to that question. So these ancient practices of sprouting and fermenting, they help to decrease certain things that the plants naturally have built in that are protective mechanisms. They're called anti-nutrients. So they're naturally occurring in the plant. They protect them, but they're not good for us. Some other animals, not humans, can digest them better, but we have a harder time. So this is where things like sprouting and fermenting can really make a big difference. And like I said, when we sprout and we ferment, we actually increase the nutrient value of the food. So it can increase the vitamin availability, the mineral availability, because some of these anti-nutrients actually decrease the ability for our body to absorb minerals because they grab onto them. So this is where it's really important when you're thinking about going plant-based, is to try and find things in the grocery store if they're already prepackaged that are sprouted and fermented, Or if you are brave enough, you've got the experience, or you want to try something new, is to try to learn how to sprout and ferment some of these things yourselves. And another point to keep in mind, especially if you're having some of those tummy troubles, so not every plant-based food has to be consumed raw. Obviously, some things have to be cooked. Certainly, you're not going to eat most grains raw because they're not going to be super tasty, and your body's not going to be able to digest them. Same goes for certain beans and other plant-based foods. So lightly cooking things can really make a difference. And I want you to keep this in mind if you're one of those people that finds when they eat a ton of raw veggies that their stomach just really hurts. I mean, certainly pay attention to what some of those foods are, because perhaps there are some intolerances there. Your body might have a harder time. But in general, oftentimes when we lightly cook something, so if you just saute it a little bit or you steam it, not so much that it becomes mush, because that's not always that enjoyable to consume, to eat, but lightly cooking these things can really help with the digestibility. Or, as somebody's talking about protein powder, making a smoothie. So for people who also have harder time digesting things, blending it up. Even if you just blend it a little bit, not so that it's a pureed smoothie consistency, can also really help. So best protein powder for a sensitive stomach. I would definitely find something that's sprouted and fermented, because that's going to help in terms of digestibility. But also keep in mind, if you think that you might be sensitive to certain things, some people really don't do well with pea protein. I'm certainly not a huge fan of that by itself. So that's something to keep in mind. If you know that there's one particular type of protein that maybe your tummy's having problems with, find a blend or try to avoid that one. So hopefully that helps answer that question. So how can you start incorporating more plant-based foods into your diet? And when I say diet, I don't mean restriction. I use the word diet just to mean the foods you're eating every single day. What's part of your regular eating program? So first off, start slowly. If you don't eat a lot of plant-based foods, I would just be really gradual with how you introduce them into your diet. So you want it to be sustainable for your lifestyle. Like I said at the very beginning, you're not going to make a radical change and try to do everything overnight. So by trying to just take a couple of small steps, dip your toe into moving more plant forward, that's really going to make the whole process a lot easier for you, for your brain, but also for your body in terms of digesting all of those plant-based foods. So my suggestion would be either to try adding more plants into, or going fully plant-based for one meal a week. So a great example is meatless Mondays. So either choosing maybe your lunch or your dinner to have a fully plant-based meal. And even just, and if you want to go so far as more than just one day a week, having one meal per day that is more plant forward or fully plant-based. Another really big key is meal prep. So it's a total game changer in my life. It's something I recommend to clients all the time. So trying to do a little bit of planning ahead can really help you to keep moving forward with what your goals are, particularly if it's to try and consume more plant-based foods. So if you can take even just 1 hour out of your schedule on one day of the week, I find weekends are really great for that, because usually I have a little bit more time to plan and grocery shop. Come up with a few recipes, start prepping some of that food, so you don't have to do it all at once, but even just doing some chopping of some of the vegetables, or soaking of some of those grains or those beans in advance. So you can soak them overnight, rinse them really well, and then cook them, and you'll have foods that are plant-based foods that are already a little bit easier for your body to digest. But doing some of that planning and that prep can really make a huge difference. And it's a great way to involve your whole family. So if you have a family, if you have a roommate, if you live with someone, if you don't, just put on some good music and get your meal prep going on, because it can really make a huge difference in being consistent with some of your goals. Also, explore the produce section. So this is another great way to incorporate more plants, is by going into the produce section and maybe looking at some of the vegetables or fruits that you don't normally eat all the time, or going down the aisle that has all the grains and trying something new. You can always ask questions for staff that are in the grocery stores, or just do some of your own research online if that's something that you're into. But try at least one new plant-based food every week. Another thing that you can do is try swapping out proteins. So if you are trying to eat more plant-based protein versus animal-based protein, then it could be as simple as, instead of having chicken in your salad, putting beans instead. So chickpeas or black beans. If you like tofu or willing to try that out, there's lots of great ways to prepare tofu, whether it is just marinated and it's uncooked and cold, or putting it into a frying pan after it's had a marinade, or just sprinkling some seasonings on it. You can also blend veggies into a sauce. So this is where I think about any picky eater, whether it's a small person or an adult. If you tend to not really like a lot of things, maybe it's textural, a lot of times kids can sniff out the things that they don't really like. If you blend it up, you cook it and then you blend it up into a sauce or a chili, they're not gonna know. It's a great way to sneak some plants into smoothies as well for little ones. And for baking, easy swaps is plant-based milk for milk if it's called for in the recipe, using something like applesauce instead of yogurt if there's something that's needed for moisture, and making a flax or a chia egg instead of using a chicken's egg. So those are some really ways that you can just swap some things out. So it's fun to be able to get creative and just think about how you can just switch a few things around. Plus, I mean, we're online right now. You've all found out about this by using social media or searching the web. So online there is so many different resources that are available. There's tons of recipes that you can find. So I encourage you to go online and search for plant-based recipes, because there's so many out there, and a lot of them are actually really easy to use. For breakfast, so this is an area where I always try to focus, getting a great start to the day. Try a plant-based protein. So if you're on the smoothie train or the protein oats train, or whatever kind of train it is that involves some type of protein powder, I highly encourage you to try a plant-based protein. My personal favorite is Iron Vegan, and I love Iron Vegan not only because what the company really stands for in terms of supporting the planet, making healthier choices, and having everything fully plant-based. They are totally pea-free, so they're all grain and seed-based plant proteins. There's lots of options flavor-wise. And what I love about it, because it's literally mostly just grains, you can use it like it's a flour. So it's high in protein, but I love to bake, so it's a great way to replace or just add in additional protein instead of some of the other flours that you might use. So you can use it in baking recipes for things like energy balls, making squares or muffins or loaves. You can add it into puddings, whether it's like a breakfast pudding, a chia pudding, those protein oats I was talking about, waffles and pancakes. But you can also add to savory dishes. So if you get the unflavored Iron Vegan sprouted protein, you can put it in things like stews or pasta dishes. And on their website, so ironvegan.ca, there's a ton of recipes. They're all plant-based, encouraging the use of things like their sprouted protein. And I just saw that there is a plant-based mac and cheese, so it's fully vegan and it uses the unflavored protein powder, so I'm super excited to try that recipe. Somebody's commented, I like it in chili or even making burgers out of it. That's an awesome way to use it. Burgers are a great way to add in that either protein powder or just throw a ton of different beans and really finely chopped veggies into a burger instead of using chicken or ground turkey or beef. So for those of you who have kids, you might also be wondering how you can approach moving more plant-based, because as I mentioned, kids can really sniff out a lot of things that they don't like. So again, you have to start slow with the gradual introduction. try to perhaps sneak a few of those veggies into smoothies or sauces that you're going to be making for some of your dishes, but also get your kids involved. The more you involve your kids in the kitchen, the more likely they are to actually be willing to try some of these things, and to give them a little bit of that ability to make some of those decisions can really help too. So like I said, check out the Iron Vegan website, ironvegan.ca. There's a recipe tab and there's tons of recipes, so I highly encourage you to check those out. For those of you that aren't super creative or comfortable in the kitchen, you don't have to worry. There's lots of simple ways to prepare meals, and with protein powder in particular, I mean, smoothies are super easy to make and they're easy to digest and they're really high in nutrients. You can also just make like a simple shaker cup with water or plant-based milk and the protein powder. And Iron Vegan has bars as well. So if you're on the go and you're looking to try to stay more plant-based, try something new. Their plant-based sprouted protein bars are amazing. The best protein bar I've ever had. So I'm always a fan and always recommending those as well. I think that brings me close to the end of my presentation. I should just see, I don't know what the time is here, but I just want to scroll back and see if there's any questions that I can respond to. I love how this chat has just been blowing up throughout. I appreciate you all joining me and giving some love and being super engaged and asking questions. So let's see here. So I think I've answered a few of these already. Let's see. Love tofu and chickpeas for my protein as well as lentils. Yes, yes, and yes. Those are all so fantastic. And the beauty with plants is that there's so much versatility. You can do so much. You can make so many different kinds of recipes. And they, like I was talking about some of the origins of plant-based diets, there is inspiration from around the world, so many different cultures and countries that have really delicious cuisine. I am only plant-based and donate blood regularly, so iron levels are high. Yes, that's awesome. So that's something that often people are concerned about as well. It's certainly important. People who are vegetarian and vegan can be a bit more prone to some nutrient deficiencies, so it is good if you are going more in that direction or going to be 100% plant-based, that you make sure that you're checking in with your doctor and getting some of those levels like your B12, your vitamin D, your iron levels checked on a regular basis, especially if you have a history of deficiencies in some of those vitamins. Let's see if there's other questions. So cooking your own beans instead of getting from a can. Yes, so certainly for people, if it's easy and it's accessible to just use a can of beans. Make sure you rinse them really well. That can also help to reduce some of that gas, bloating, and discomfort that you might get with beans. But cooking your own is a fabulous way to go. It's super cost effective. You can buy them in bulk. And like I was saying, for that sprouting, fermenting, you're not going to go all the way to sprouting your beans, but soaking them overnight and rinsing them multiple times can really make a huge difference in terms of how your body can digest those. And somebody's got an Instapot and they use that. I don't have an Instapot, but I have a pressure cooker from India, and either way that does the trick. That certainly is an easy way to go for people who can use those kitchen gadgets. Let's see. Can a plant-based diet help hormone balances? Now that's a very loaded question. It's a really good question. There's certainly a lot to it. So I would say that there will certainly be a lot of health benefits from going plant-based, depending on what the hormone balance is. Like, I don't want to say, yes, it's going to cure whatever your hormone imbalance is. It can certainly have a positive effect, but if you know that or think you might have a hormone imbalance, I would certainly make sure you're working with a healthcare practitioner to dig into that. So ideas for plant-based lunch ideas for kiddos. Oh, there's so many. For kids, Obviously, having some type of finger foods, sandwiches, things where you can combine, you know, like seedy crackers along with either like a plant-based cheese, or if your kids are into eating tofu, there's lots of different kinds of tofu out there. Those are going to be some really simple things. Veggies with hummus or other dips that are high in protein and fiber are going to be really great. Even some type of a dip with different fruits. If your kids are, depending on their age, if they're into salads, that can be a great way that you can add a lot of nutrient density. Or if they like pasta dishes, anything where you can put a lot of those plants into a sauce. It depends on how messy you are thinking what messes you want to either incorporate or avoid in your kids' lunch boxes, but hopefully those are a few. Is there downside to tofu? I wouldn't say, I mean, certainly if you've got an intolerance to soy, then you should avoid tofu. There is a lot of misinformation about tofu in terms of some of the impacts from a hormonal side of things with estrogen. So there's a lot of research that has debunked that. And I mean, culturally, there are a lot of cultures that consume high amounts of tofu, and there isn't a higher incidence of any hormone imbalance or hormone related issues. GMO soybeans is a real deterrent, absolutely. So when you're looking at things, and this obviously is dependent on accessibility, as not everyone has the ability to afford everything that is non-GMO or organic, but where you can consume things that are coming from those more clean, organic and non-GMO sources, but also looking on like Environmental Working Group's website. So that's a great resource of information for info on what foods to avoid that are really usually heavily GMO or pesticide laden. Let's see here. So many great comments, you guys. I absolutely love it. I think, how are we doing time-wise? We're pretty good. I'll just scroll through and see if there's any others, and then I think I'll probably have to sign off. But I appreciate all of you being here. Let's see. I love how everyone was chatting with one another too. Okay, what about burritos, wraps, enchiladas, Greek quinoa salad, meatless meatballs? You guys are coming up with all the menu ideas for one another. I love this. This is great. Marinating tempeh, marinating tofu, really great ways to add tons of flavor, to make things more interesting, to be able to change it up as well, so it's not always the same. So fantastic. I really appreciate all of your comments. As Nature's Fair mentioned, they've got meal kits with tempeh at their stores. I'll definitely send along. If you want to get in touch with me directly, you can contact or send a message to Nature's Fair and they can pass it along. So if you have any other questions that I haven't been able to answer, I'm going to have to sign off, but please do send those along. So ask those questions to Nature's Fair, send them a message, and they'll be able to pass that along to me, and then I can get back to you with your answers. But I appreciate you taking time to join me here. I hope that you'll check out some of the things that I've suggested and incorporate them into your meal planning for the rest of this week or for next week. I'll be excited to hear about some of the fantastic meals that you've created that are plant-based. And thanks again to Nature's Fair for letting me take over their Facebook Live and for just being a platform for conversations like this. I think it's so amazing that we can be connecting and sharing ideas and looking for ways that we can support one another and be more healthy. So now I just have to figure out how to end this Facebook Live, but thanks for joining me. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.